Virgin Billionaire CEO freezes when he sees new black maid sleeping on the toilet and falls madly in love. She woke up on Egyptian cotton sheets in a room worth more than her student loans, with no memory of how she got there. Have you ever woken up somewhere unexpected because someone showed you kindness? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The Ice Prince of Silicon Valley had rules for everything, including never entering the guest bathroom after midnight. But the soft sound of breathing, where silence should reign, made Logan Pierce break his own protocol. What he found curled on the toilet seat wasn't an intruder. It was his new maid, shoes kicked off, uniform wrinkled, clutching her phone like a prayer. Have you ever seen someone so vulnerable that it cracks something inside your chest? This moment changed a billionaire's entire world. A 34-year-old virgin billionaire discovers his maid sleeping in his bathroom. And for the first time in his optimized life, he doesn't know what protocol to follow. Have you ever walked in on someone's private moment of exhaustion? When you realized they were human, not just a service provider. Logan Pierce controlled billion-dollar deals, but couldn't control the way his pulse quickened watching Naomi sleep. What happens when perfect control meets unexpected tenderness? The smart mansion hummed with algorithmic precision, climate controlled to 68.4 degrees, lights dimmed to optimal melatonin production, every surface gleaming with the kind of clean that erased human traces. Except for this bathroom, where humanity had collapsed in uniform and bare feet. Logan stood frozen in his silk pajamas and Italian leather slippers, staring at a sight that broke every rule in his carefully constructed world. The woman who'd started work 3 days ago lay curled against the toilet seat, her dark skin golden under the motion sensor lights, lips parted slightly in exhaustion. Her name tag read Naomi, but nothing else about her made sense. The way she held her phone like a lifeline, the expensive watch on her wrist that didn't match her thrift store uniform, the medical alert bracelet half hidden under her sleeve. Logan's breath caught. He'd interviewed dozens of candidates through his staffing agency, but something about Naomi had stood out. Not just her quiet efficiency or the way she moved through his spaces without disturbing the careful order. It was her eyes, intelligent, guarded, like she was solving problems he couldn't see. Now those eyes were closed, dark lashes casting shadows on cheeks that looked too thin, too tired. Her uniform had shifted in sleep, revealing the curve of her collarbone, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. Logan felt something stir in his chest that had nothing to do with his usual clinical observations. He should wake her, send her to the proper guest room, maintain professional boundaries like his business advisors always preached. But Logan found himself studying the way her fingers wrapped around her phone, knuckles showing the stress of whatever kept her awake most nights. 3 days. She'd been in his house 3 days, and already his routines felt different. Coffee appeared exactly when he needed it. His shirts hung with military precision. The house ran smoother than his tech algorithms. But it was the small things that unsettled him. The way she hummed softly while working, how she quietly moved his mother's photo to catch better light, the gentle good morning, Mr. Pierce, that made his name sound less corporate. Logan reached toward her shoulder, then stopped. His hand trembled, actually trembled, something that hadn't happened since his first board meeting at 25. What would you do if you found someone this exhausted in your home? Would you wake them, or would you stand there frozen like Logan did? Tell me in the comments. Naomi's phone buzzed against her palm, the screen lighting up with a text that made Logan's blood freeze. We know where you are. Stop running. Logan's hand froze midair. The message disappeared as quickly as it came, but the threat hung in the sterile bathroom air like poison. His maid, quiet, efficient Naomi, who made his coffee perfect every morning, was running from someone who'd found her. As Logan reached to wake her, questions flooded his mind faster than his processors could handle them. Who was his maid running from? Follow along as we discover what happens when Silicon Valley's most controlled man meets the woman who will destroy his perfectly programmed life. She woke up on Egyptian cotton sheets in a room worth more than her student loans, with no memory of how she got there. Naomi's eyes snapped open to unfamiliar ceiling molding and the scent of expensive everything. Panic shot through her system until memory clicked back into place. The exhaustion, falling asleep in the bathroom, then nothing. The guest bedroom looked like a hotel suite designed by someone who never needed to worry about money. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the San Francisco skyline in morning light, each building gleaming like it was personally polished. Her uniform hung pressed and clean on the back of a chair that probably cost more than her last apartment's rent. Good. You're awake. Naomi spun toward the voice, pulling the silk sheet up to her chin. Logan Pierce stood in the doorway holding a breakfast tray, looking uncomfortable in his own house. His dark hair was perfectly styled even at 7 a.m., his button-down shirt pressed to military standards. But something about his usual corporate composure seemed cracked around the edges. How did I? She started, heat flooding her cheeks. You fell asleep in the bathroom, Logan said, setting the tray on the nightstand with careful precision. I moved you here. You needed rest. The breakfast spread looked like something from a five-star restaurant. Fresh fruit arranged in perfect patterns, coffee that smelled like it cost more per pound than most people made in a day, pastries that belonged in magazine photos. Mr. Pierce, I'm so sorry. This is completely unprofessional. I should have. When did you last sleep in a real bed? The question caught her off guard. Logan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, but his eyes held something she'd never seen from employers before: genuine concern. I sleep fine, Naomi lied, pulling his oversized t-shirt down over her thighs. She didn't remember changing clothes, but someone had dressed her in soft cotton that smelled like expensive laundry detergent. The bathroom floor isn't fine. Logan's voice carried an edge she couldn't identify. You've been here 3 days. Where have you been sleeping? He crept up Naomi's neck. The truth, that she'd been catching naps in her car between shifts, showering at the gym, eating dollar menu meals, wasn't something billionaires needed to hear about. I have a place, she said carefully. Logan watched her like he was reading code, processing information she wasn't giving him. Morning light hit his face, revealing details she'd missed during their brief professional interactions. The sharp line of his jaw, eyes that looked tired despite his perfect appearance. A small scar near his left temple that humanized his corporate perfection. You don't have to lie to me, he said quietly. The gentleness in his voice almost broke her. Naomi had spent 8 months building walls against kindness, learning that sympathy usually came with strings attached. But Logan's concern felt different. Careful, respectful, like he was offering help instead of demanding explanations. Have you ever woken up somewhere unexpected because someone showed you kindness? How'd it make you feel? Share your experience below. She reached for a piece of fruit, her stomach betraying her with a loud growl. Logan's mouth almost smiled, the first real expression she'd seen from him. You didn't have to, she started. I don't do things I don't want to do, Logan interrupted, his voice rougher than intended. When Logan handed her an envelope with her first week's pay, double what they'd agreed, Naomi's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. You don't know what you're getting into, she whispered. Before he could ask what she meant, his assistant's urgent call shattered the moment. Sir, there are reporters at the gate asking about your new staff member. By noon, Silicon Valley's most private billionaire was trending on social media, all because of a woman whose real name he didn't even know. Logan stared at his phone screen in disbelief. Hashtag Logan Pierce was trending worldwide, right between celebrity breakups and political scandals. Photos of his mansion filled Twitter feeds. Reporters camped outside his gates like he'd committed corporate fraud instead of simply hiring household staff. How did they even know? Logan muttered, pacing his home office while news alerts flooded his devices. Naomi sat perched on the edge of his leather chair, still wearing his t-shirt, her expression cycling between panic and resignation. She'd gone completely still the moment his assistant called, like prey sensing predators. This is my fault, she said quietly. I should leave. You're not going anywhere. The words came out harsher than Logan intended, surprising them both. He'd never been possessive about anything except market share and quarterly profits. But the thought of Naomi walking out his front door into that media circus made something protective roar to life in his chest. The mansion security room flickered with dozens of monitors showing reporters clustered at the gates like digital vultures, their cameras trained on windows that had never needed to hide secrets before. Logan's head of security, Marcus, pointed at the screens with military efficiency. "Started around 10 a.m., sir." Someone tipped them about new household staff, specifically about her. Marcus nodded toward Naomi, his expression carefully neutral. Logan moved closer to the monitors, close enough that his shoulder brushed Naomi's. She didn't pull away, but he felt her tension like electricity in the air. Her skin was warm through the thin cotton, and he caught the scent of his expensive shampoo in her hair. "I can handle reporters," Logan said, his jaw tight with unfamiliar anger. "But I can't protect someone who won't tell me what they're running from." Naomi's hands twisted in her lap. For a moment, Logan thought she might finally explain the fear that lived behind her careful smiles. The way she jumped when his phone rang, how she checked exits in every room like she was memorizing escape routes. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Everything worth protecting is complicated." Their eyes met in the reflection of the security monitors, and Logan saw something shift in her expression. Trust warring with survival instincts. Hope fighting years of learned caution. When was the last time someone protected you without knowing the full story? Have you ever had to trust a stranger with your safety? Drop a comment below. Before Naomi could respond, the office door burst open. Victoria Chun, Logan's VP, and the closest thing he had to a friend, stormed in with her tablet clutched like a weapon. Her usually perfect black hair was disheveled, her designer suit wrinkled like she'd been running. "We need to talk. Now." Victoria's voice carried the kind of barely controlled panic that made Logan's stomach drop. She thrust her tablet toward them, and the headline on the screen made Naomi's face drain of all color. "Fugitive med student, from or to billionaire's bedroom." The article continued below the fold, complete with a photo that made Logan's blood freeze. Naomi in medical scrubs, younger and smiling, standing outside a Houston hospital that looked nothing like the woman sitting beside him now. As Naomi finally opened her mouth to explain, Victoria's presence filled the room with accusations Logan couldn't yet understand. But one thing was crystal clear: his quiet, efficient maid had been living under an identity that was about to explode both their worlds. She'd spent 8 months running from a lie that destroyed her career, until the day she found herself confessing the truth to the one man who could destroy her completely. Victoria's tablet lay between them like evidence in a criminal trial. The photo of young Naomi in medical scrubs seemed to mock the woman now curled in Logan's oversized t-shirt, her carefully built walls crumbling in real time. "Dr. Naomi Williams," Victoria read from the article, her voice sharp with accusation. "Former medical resident at Atlanta General, suspended from Houston Memorial after allegations of fatal medical malpractice. Disappeared 8 months ago before disciplinary hearings." Logan's world tilted. His quiet maid was a doctor, had been a doctor. The expensive watch, the way she'd known exactly how to help when he'd cut his hand on broken glass last week, the medical alert bracelet. It all made horrible sense now. "Is it true?" Logan asked quietly. Naomi closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the woman who'd been carefully invisible for 3 days was gone. In her place sat someone older, battle-worn, carrying grief like a physical weight. The malpractice part? No. The disappearing part? Obviously. They sat in Logan's private study, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and awards that spoke of legitimate achievement, while she explained how her own accomplishments had been twisted into weapons against her. "I was the only black resident in my program," Naomi began, her voice steady despite the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Graduated top of my class from Emory, published research on cardiac surgery innovations, perfect record for 3 years." Logan found himself leaning forward, drawn by her strength even in vulnerability. Something about the way she held herself, proud despite the fear, made his chest tighten with emotions he couldn't name. "Then I got assigned to Houston for my final rotation. Memorial Healthcare. The attending physician there, Dr. Richard Caldwell, he had opinions about residents who didn't look like him. Victoria shifted impatiently, but Logan held up a hand for silence. This wasn't a business briefing. This was Naomi's life, and she deserved to tell it without interruption. There was a patient, elderly white man, came in with chest pains. I ran every test, followed every protocol, but Caldwell overruled my diagnosis, said I was being overly cautious because of my background. He sent the patient home. Logan's hands clenched into fists. He could see where this was heading, and rage was building in his chest like pressure in a steam engine. The patient died that night. Heart attack. And somehow, all the documentation showed that I had been the one to discharge him. My signature on forms I never signed, my notes altered in the system, witnesses who suddenly remember me making decisions I never made. Jesus, Logan breathed. The hospital board launched an investigation, but it was all theater. They'd already decided I was the problem. Easier to blame the black resident than admit their golden boy was a racist who killed a patient. Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? How did it change the way you trust others? Share your story in the comments. I tried to fight it, Naomi continued, her voice breaking slightly. Hired lawyers I couldn't afford, gathered evidence, found other residents willing to testify. But Caldwell had been there 15 years. I'd been there 15 weeks. When Logan said, "I believe you," with absolute certainty, something shifted in Naomi's chest, something dangerous and warm. Before she could process the relief flooding through her, Victoria's voice cut through the intercom. "Logan, your board of directors is here. They want to discuss your recent staffing choices." He'd faced hostile takeovers and SEC investigations without breaking a sweat. But defending the woman hiding in his guest room made Logan's hands shake for the first time in decades. The boardroom's glass walls offered a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. But Logan felt more trapped than liberated by the transparency as 12 faces stared at him with calculated disappointment. These were men and women who'd helped build Pierce Tech from a Stanford dorm room idea into a billion-dollar empire. Their opinions had guided every major decision of his career. Today, their opinions could go straight to hell. "Logan," began Chairman Robert Hayes, his grandfather's oldest friend and the closest thing Logan had to family. "We're concerned about the media attention surrounding your household staff." Around the mahogany table, board members shifted uncomfortably. Logan recognized the look, the same expression they'd worn when he'd refused to take Pierce Tech public, when he'd insisted on ethical AI development over faster profits. The look that said they knew better than he did about his own life. "My personal staff choices don't require board approval," Logan said, his voice carrying steel he'd never used in this room before. "Unless you're suggesting Pierce Tech's success depends on who cleans my house." Victoria sat at his right hand, tablet open to trending social media posts about Logan's mystery woman. Her perfectly manicured fingers traced the screen with what looked like satisfaction. "The optics are problematic," said board member Dr. Patricia Vance, her tone clinically disapproving. "A fugitive medical professional living in your home raises questions about your judgment. Our investors are already asking questions." Logan's jaw tightened. These people had never worried about optics when his antisocial behavior and virgin status became industry jokes. They'd never cared about his judgment when he'd revolutionized 3 different tech sectors before turning 30. But a black woman sleeping in his guest room was somehow a bridge too far. What questions exactly? Logan's voice dropped to the dangerous quiet his competitors had learned to fear. The silence stretched until Hayes cleared his throat. "The woman has allegations of medical malpractice. Criminal charges pending. Having her in your home. The charges are fabricated." Logan stood, his chair rolling back with more force than necessary. Dr. Naomi Williams was framed by a racist hospital system that needed a scapegoat. "I've seen the evidence." 12 shocked faces stared back at him. Logan Pierce didn't interrupt board meetings. He didn't raise his voice. He certainly didn't defend people he'd known for less than a week with the passion of a man defending his family. "You've investigated her?" Victoria's voice carried surprise that sounded almost fake. I've listened to her. Logan's eyes swept the room, cataloging every disapproving expression, every concerned frown. Something none of you seem interested in doing. Have you ever had to choose between fitting in and standing up for what's right? When did you find your backbone? Tell me below. As the board filed out in frustrated silence, Victoria lingered. Her hand landed on Logan's shoulder with practiced familiarity, but something about the touch felt calculated now. You're playing with fire, Logan, she warned, her fingers squeezing slightly. Some people aren't worth burning your empire down for. But Logan was already wondering if his empire was worth keeping if it meant abandoning someone who needed him. The woman upstairs, brilliant, broken, brave enough to keep fighting when the whole system turned against her, had shown him more courage in 4 days than he'd seen in boardrooms full of billion-dollar decisions. For the first time in his perfectly optimized life, Logan Pierce knew exactly what was worth fighting for. She was folding his shirts when he found her crying, and for the first time in his virgin life, Logan Pierce knew exactly what he wanted to do. The laundry room, tucked away from the mansion's main arteries, felt like a secret cave, filled with warm cotton and the scent of expensive detergent. Steam from the dryer had fogged the single window, creating a cocoon of privacy that the rest of his glass house couldn't offer. Naomi stood with her back to the door, shoulders shaking as she pressed one of his white dress shirts against her face. The careful composure she'd maintained through board meetings and media attacks had finally cracked, and Logan felt his heart break watching her try to muffle her sobs in Egyptian cotton. Naomi, she spun around, dropping the shirt like she'd been caught stealing. Tears streaked down her cheeks, and her eyes held the wild look of someone who'd been holding back everything for too long. I'm sorry, she gasped, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. The reporters outside, they're saying things about my patient, about how I killed him, and I can't stop hearing his daughter's voice when she found out. Logan crossed the small space in 2 steps, his hands reaching for her face before conscious thought could stop him. Her skin was warm and damp under his thumbs as he brushed away tears that shouldn't exist in his perfect world. Don't cry, he whispered, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was soft, uncertain, but devastatingly sincere. Naomi tasted like morning coffee and brave decisions, like everything real he'd been missing in his sanitized life. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as 8 months of running and hiding and pretending to be invisible melted away. Logan had kissed exactly 3 women in his 34 years. Awkward encounters at college parties that felt more like business transactions than intimacy. But kissing Naomi felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Logan rested his forehead against hers. Her eyes were still wet, but something had shifted in their depths. Surprise, relief, what? I don't know how to do this, Logan admitted against her lips, his voice rougher than he'd ever heard it. Then we'll figure out together, Naomi breathed. The laundry room suddenly felt smaller, warmer, charged with electricity that had nothing to do with the mansion's smart home systems. Logan's hands were still cupping her face, and he could feel her pulse racing under his thumbs. You taste like possibility, he said, the words surprising them both with their honesty. Naomi's laugh was shaky but real. You taste like expensive coffee and good decisions. This feels like a terrible decision, Logan murmured, but he didn't step back. The best ones usually do. What's more powerful, someone's first kiss or someone's first time feeling truly safe? Drop a heart if you've experienced that moment. Logan was leaning forward for another kiss when his phone erupted with notifications. Text after text, call after call, the digital world demanding his attention. But for once, he ignored it all, focusing on the woman in his arms who taught him that some things were more important than algorithms and efficiency. Then Naomi's phone buzzed against the washing machine, and they both froze. The screen lit up with a message that made Logan's blood turn to ice. Cute couple. Would hate for the medical board to see these photos. Attached was a grainy image, them kissing, shot through the laundry room's fog window. Someone was watching them. Someone with a camera and a grudge had been documenting their most private moments. As they broke apart, both breathing hard, Logan realized with startling clarity that privacy was the one thing his billions couldn't buy, especially when someone with a camera and a grudge decided to make their secret public. Privacy was the one thing Logan's billions couldn't buy, especially when someone with a camera and a grudge decided to make their secret public. By evening, every screen in the mansion blazed with their faces. Gossip sites, financial news, social media feeds, all carrying the same grainy photos of their kiss in a laundry room window. The headlines grew more vicious by the hour. Billionaire's dirty laundry from maid to mistress. The fugitive doctor's next con, Pierce Texo caught in medical malpractice scandal. Logan paced his home office like a caged animal, while Naomi sat frozen on his leather couch, staring at her phone screen. The comment sections were brutal. Racist attacks on her character, mixed with speculation about Logan's mental state. His company's stock had dropped 12 points in 6 hours. "We need to get you out of here," Logan said, running his hands through his hair for the 10th time in an hour. "Where exactly would I go?" Naomi's voice was hollow. "They have photos, Logan. Close-up shots of us kissing. Someone was right outside your window with a telephoto lens." The violation felt personal in a way Logan had never experienced. His mansion was supposed to be a fortress, protected by the best security money could buy. But someone had breached that safety, had been watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Sir, we've swept the grounds. No sign of photographers now, but we found evidence of surveillance equipment in the oak tree facing the laundry room window. Professional-grade stuff. Inside job?" Logan asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Had to be. Someone with access to the property, knowledge of your routines, ability to plan equipment without triggering our sensors." Logan's mind raced through possibilities. His household staff had been with him for years, thoroughly vetted, completely trustworthy. His business associates had no reason to destroy him personally. Unless... His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. They're talking about removing you as CEO. We need to discuss damage control." Naomi looked up from her phone, face pale. "Logan, there's something else. The photo metadata. It was taken yesterday. Before we kissed today. Someone's been watching us for days." The room felt like it was closing in. Logan had built his entire life around control, predictability, safety. Now, someone was playing games with all three, using Naomi as both weapon and target. "I should leave," Naomi said quietly. "This is destroying everything you've built. You're not going anywhere." The words came out harder than Logan intended, but he meant every syllable. "Whoever's doing this wants you gone. Which means staying is exactly what we're going to do." Have you ever had your private moment made public? How did you handle having your business in the streets? Share your experience. As if summoned by Logan's defiance, his phone rang. Unknown number, but Logan answered anyway. "Enjoying the spotlight, Mr. Pierce?" The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "Your little girlfriend's past is just the beginning. Drop her or watch your empire burn." When Logan's head of security delivered the bad news, the photos came from inside the house, sir. They both realized the enemy wasn't outside the gates. Someone Logan trusted had been watching, waiting, and recording everything. The question wasn't who wanted to destroy them. It was who had been close enough to do it. Love makes you blind to danger, but security cameras don't lie about who's been recording your most intimate moments. Logan stared at the security footage on his office monitors, watching 3 days of his life play out in fast forward. There, Victoria entering his study at midnight when she thought everyone was asleep. There, Victoria lingering outside the laundry room yesterday morning, phone in hand. There, Victoria's car parked across the street at 6 a.m., telephoto lens glinting in the sunrise. His VP, his trusted colleague, the woman who'd helped build Pierce Tech from startup to empire. The person he'd considered his closest friend had been systematically documenting his relationship with Naomi, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy them both. "How long?" Logan asked Marcus, his voice deadly quiet. Based on the metadata, she's been taking photos for a week. But the equipment in the tree was planted the day after Dr. Williams started work. Naomi sat beside him, staring at the evidence with the hollow expression of someone who'd been betrayed too many times. She knew. From the first day, she knew who I was and what she could do with that information. Logan's hands clenched into fists. Victoria had sat in meetings, offered strategic advice, expressed concern about the media attention, all while secretly feeding that same media the ammunition to destroy him. The manipulation was so complete, so calculated, that Logan felt physically sick. Victoria's corner office reflected her perfectly curated image, awards, art, and ambition displayed with surgical precision. But her hands shook as she faced Logan across the glass desk that had hosted 1,000 strategic meetings. "You want to explain this?" Logan slammed the tablet onto her desk, security footage frozen on her face as she photographed his house. Victoria's composed mask finally slipped, tears mixed with perfectly applied mascara, creating tracks down cheeks that had never shown emotion in 7 years of working together. "I've loved you for 3 years," she said, her voice breaking. 3 years of watching you shut everyone out, of being your only real relationship, even if it was just professional. "I gave you everything. You gave me efficiency," Logan replied, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. "That's not the same thing." "And what does she give you?" Victoria's tears turned angry, desperate. A woman with a destroyed career, legal problems, baggage that could ruin everything we built? "I protected you from relationships that would hurt you, by destroying the one that might actually save me." The words hung between them, like a confession Logan hadn't meant to make. But seeing Victoria's calculated cruelty had crystallized something he'd been trying to ignore. Naomi hadn't just disrupted his life. She'd made it worth living. The board voted, Victoria said quietly. "Emergency session this morning. They want you to choose, her or the company." Logan studied the woman who'd been his right hand, his strategic advisor, his buffer against the human messiness he'd never learned to navigate. She'd hidden her feelings behind professional competence, her jealousy behind corporate concern. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was working against you? How did it change the way you see people? Tell me in the comments. As Victoria's security badge was deactivated and she cleared out her office, Logan rushed home to find the guest room empty. Naomi's few possessions gone. Nothing left but a note. "You deserve better than someone who brings chaos to your perfect world." The woman who'd taught him how to feel had disappeared, leaving Logan alone with the wreckage of his carefully constructed life and the knowledge that losing her hurt worse than losing his company ever could. He'd built algorithms that could find anything on the internet, except the one woman who mattered more than his entire digital empire. Logan's private jet cut through clouds toward Atlanta, the city lights below looking nothing like the organized grid of San Francisco. This was Naomi's world, humid, chaotic, alive in ways his climate-controlled existence had never allowed. 3 days. She'd been gone 3 days, and Logan had used every resource at his disposal to track her down. Private investigators, facial recognition software, financial records, social media monitoring. Everything that made him Silicon Valley's most connected CEO had failed to locate one brilliant woman who knew how to disappear. The Pierce Tech board had given him an ultimatum. Find her and end the relationship publicly or lose his position as CEO. Logan's response had been to charter a jet and start searching personally, leaving his company in the hands of advisors who thought he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. The man who'd built a billion-dollar empire on logic and efficiency was now chasing a woman across the country based on nothing but the memory of how she tasted and the way she'd made him feel human for the first time in his life. Naomi's old medical school stood like a monument to dreams deferred, its brick buildings and tree-lined campus speaking of hope and ambition. Logan felt out of place in his tailored suit and Italian leather shoes, but desperation made him bold. "Dr. Williams?" The admissions secretary's face softened with recognition and sadness. Such a tragedy what happened to her. Brilliant student, top of her class, published 3 papers before graduation. She was going to change cardiac surgery. Logan's chest tightened. Each detail about Naomi's destroyed career made Victoria's betrayal feel more vicious, more personal. She hadn't just tried to remove a romantic rival. She'd helped destroy a woman who could have saved lives. Do you know where she might go? Family, friends, anywhere she felt safe? The secretary studied Logan with the careful assessment of someone who'd spent decades reading people. You're the billionaire from the news, the one she was working for. I'm the man who loves her, Logan said, surprising himself with a simple honesty. At Naomi's childhood church in Atlanta, the pastor's wife smiled sadly when Logan explained his search. The small sanctuary smelled like old wood and faithful prayers, nothing like the sterile conference rooms where Logan usually conducted business. She was here yesterday, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice warm with decades of counseling broken hearts. Sat right there in the third pew, crying like her heart was shattered. That girl's been running so long, I don't think she remembers how to stop. Hope flared in Logan's chest. Did she say where she was going? She left you this. Mrs. Johnson handed him an envelope, her knowing eyes holding sympathy for both the hunter and the hunted. How far would you go to find someone who disappeared from your life? What would you risk to get them back? Share your thoughts below. Inside the envelope was a medical school photo. Naomi in her white coat, young and smiling, surrounded by classmates who'd probably all gone on to successful careers while she ran from false accusations. But it was the address written on the back that made Logan's hand shake. Memorial Healthcare Center, Houston, Texas. Not where Naomi was, where her nightmare began. She wasn't running anymore. She was going back to face the system that destroyed her, and Logan realized with crystal clarity that she planned to do it alone. He walked into the Houston hospital that destroyed her career armed with lawyers, money, and a billionaire's fury, but nothing prepared him for the truth he uncovered. Memorial Healthcare Center rose from the Houston concrete like a monument to medical progress. Its gleaming exterior hiding the rot Logan's investigation was about to expose. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and corporate sponsorship plaques, but Logan saw it differently now, through the eyes of a brilliant black woman who'd been systematically destroyed by this institution. His legal team flanked him like corporate warriors, tablets loaded with evidence, contracts ready to be deployed. But Logan's focus was singular. Find the truth that would clear Naomi's name and destroy everyone who'd participated in her character assassination. Dr. Richard Caldwell still worked at Memorial, still held his position as chief of cardiology despite having a patient die under his watch. Logan found him in his corner office, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of practice smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Pierce, what an unexpected honor, Caldwell said, extending his hand like they were meeting at a country club instead of the scene of his crimes. Logan didn't shake it. We need to talk about Dr. Naomi Williams. Caldwell's smile faltered. That was an unfortunate situation. The young woman was clearly overwhelmed by the responsibilities of her position. We tried to support her, but you framed her. Logan's voice carried the cold fury of a man who'd seen the evidence. Altered her medical notes, forged her signature on discharge papers, coached witnesses to lie about her involvement. The color drained from Caldwell's face. I don't know what you think you know, but I know you killed Ernest Hoffman through medical negligence, then blamed the black resident to save your career. Logan placed a tablet on Caldwell's desk, security footage playing in crystal clear detail. I also know you're about to confess. The footage showed everything. Caldwell altering electronic records, meeting with hospital administrators to coordinate their story, even the moment he'd forged Naomi's signature on the discharge papers. Logan's investigation team had been thorough, expensive, and utterly relentless. This will destroy you, Caldwell whispered, staring at his own crimes playing out on screen. It should have destroyed you 8 months ago, Logan replied. Instead, you destroyed an innocent woman's career and let a patient's family believe their father died because of medical incompetence from someone who actually tried to save him. The hospital's administrative offices buzzed with carefully controlled panic as Logan's legal team delivered evidence to the medical board, the state licensing commission, and the local district attorney. Phone calls were made, careers ended, and a system that had protected racist colleagues while destroying a brilliant doctor finally faced consequences. But Logan's growing respect and desire for Naomi intensified as he learned about her strength and integrity. Every person he interviewed, nurses who'd worked with her, patients she treated, professors who'd taught her, painted the same picture. Exceptional doctor, compassionate caregiver, woman who'd fought for every patient regardless of their ability to pay. Have you ever discovered that someone you cared about faced injustice you knew nothing about? How did it change your perspective? Comment below. As Logan's legal team delivered the evidence that would clear Naomi's name, his phone rang. Her voice, shaking but determined. "Logan, I saw the news, but there's something else you need to know. I'm pregnant." The words hit Logan like lightning. Beautiful, terrifying, life-changing lightning that illuminated everything he'd been too afraid to admit. He'd found her, but now he had to convince her that love wasn't about rescue. It was about choosing each other, consequences and all. She'd spent months running from a false accusation, but the truth growing inside her wasn't something she could escape. Logan found Naomi on the porch swing of a small boarding house in rural Georgia, her hand resting protectively on a barely visible bump beneath her loose cotton dress. Spanish moss draped ancient oaks around the property like nature's curtains, and the evening air hummed with cicadas and the weight of unspoken truths. She looked up when his rental car pulled into the gravel driveway, and Logan saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not fear or exhaustion, but a fierce protective love that made his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. "I was wondering when you'd find me," Naomi said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Logan climbed the wooden steps slowly, afraid sudden movements might make her bolt again. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked more beautiful than any woman he'd ever seen in designer gowns and perfect lighting. "How long have you known?" he asked, settling beside her on the swing that creaked with the weight of two people learning how to trust each other. 2 weeks. I was throwing up every morning, thought it was stress from running, from everything falling apart. Naomi's hand moved in small circles over her stomach. Then I took a test in a gas station bathroom in Alabama, and everything changed. Logan stared at her profile, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way afternoon sunlight caught the gold in her dark skin. "Is it mine?" The question came out harsher than he intended, and Naomi's head snapped toward him with fire in her eyes. "I was a virgin when I met you, Logan, despite what your ex-VP and her media friends want everyone to believe." Her voice carried the steel that had gotten her through medical school and 8 months of running. "This baby is yours. The question is whether you want to be its father." Logan reached for her hand, threading their fingers together like he was afraid she might disappear again. "I want everything with you. The baby, the chaos, the media circus, all of it. I just need to know you want it too." For the first time since he'd arrived, Naomi's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as 8 months of isolation and fear finally found release. "I was scared," she whispered as he pulled her close. "Of this, of us, of wanting something I might lose again. I've lost everything before, Logan. My career, my reputation, my future. I couldn't handle losing you too. You're not losing me." Logan's arms tightened around her, breathing in the scent of her hair and the promise of their future. "I cleared your name. The hospital board met this morning. Full reinstatement, public apology, settlement that'll make sure you never have to worry about money again." Naomi pulled back to study his face. "What did you do?" "I proved that Dr. Richard Caldwell altered your medical records, forged your signature, and coached witnesses to lie. He's facing criminal charges, and Memorial Healthcare is under federal investigation for systematic discrimination." The relief that washed over Naomi's features was like watching someone step out of shadows into sunlight. But Logan saw something else there too, a wariness that came from learning not to trust good news. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know?" Logan cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away fresh tears. "Because somewhere between finding you asleep in my bathroom and watching you tell the truth even when it hurt, I fell in love with you." Not the idea of you, not the fantasy of saving someone. Your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to let them break you. What's scarier, being alone or risking everything for love? Have you ever had to choose between safety and happiness? Share your story. I don't want to be saved, Naomi said, her voice stronger now. I want to be chosen. Then choose me back, Logan replied, and when she kissed him, it tasted like second chances and new beginnings. As they held each other on that porch, Logan's phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. Hospital board meeting tomorrow. They want to make a public apology and offer full reinstatement. Dr. Williams' medical career is officially restored. The system that destroyed her wanted to make amends, but Logan knew the only thing that mattered was the woman in his arms and the future growing inside her. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about making sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. The courthouse steps in Houston blazed under television lights as reporters gathered for what would become a landmark case about medical racism and corporate accountability. Naomi stood beside Logan, her hand resting on her growing belly, wearing a navy dress that managed to be both professional and radiant. She'd chosen to testify, not for the settlement money or the career restoration, but because 3 other Black medical residents had come forward with similar stories about Dr. Caldwell and Memorial Healthcare's pattern of discrimination. Are you ready for this? Logan asked, squeezing her hand as cameras flashed around them. I've been ready for 8 months, Naomi replied, her voice carrying the strength that had first attracted him. The question is whether they're ready to hear the truth. Inside the federal courthouse, Naomi's testimony was surgical in its precision. She detailed every altered record, every forged signature, every witness who'd been coached to lie about her involvement in Ernest Hoffman's death. But more than that, she spoke about the systematic racism that made such a cover-up possible. They didn't just destroy my career, she told the packed courtroom. They sent a message to every Black medical student that their achievements mean nothing if a white colleague needs a scapegoat. They told patients that some doctors' lives matter more than others. Logan watched from the gallery, his chest swelling with pride and love for the woman who'd found her voice after months of being silenced. This wasn't the exhausted maid he'd found sleeping in his bathroom. This was Dr. Naomi Williams, brilliant physician and fierce advocate for justice. The hospital's legal team tried to discredit her, painting her as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. But Logan's investigation had been too thorough, the evidence too overwhelming. When the jury reached their verdict after only 4 hours of deliberation, even the judge seemed moved by the gravity of the decision. Memorial Healthcare Center is hereby ordered to pay damages in the amount of $12.3 million and implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all medical staff, the judge announced. Furthermore, Dr. Richard Caldwell's medical license is permanently revoked. Later that evening, in their hotel suite overlooking downtown Houston, Logan and Naomi finally had their private moment of celebration. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands cradling her bump, tears of relief finally flowing freely. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. Logan knelt beside her, his hands covering hers on their baby's temporary home. No, it's just beginning. Your medical license is restored. The settlement gives us financial freedom to do whatever we want. And in 6 months, we're going to be parents. Naomi pulled him up for a kiss that tasted like victory and new possibilities. What do we want to do? I want to start a foundation, Logan said, the idea forming as he spoke. Medical justice advocacy, legal support for healthcare workers facing discrimination, scholarships for underrepresented students in medical school. The Pierce Williams Foundation, Naomi suggested with a smile. When was the last time you stood up and spoke your truth, knowing it might cost you? What gave you the courage? Tell me in the comments. As they held each other in the aftermath of justice finally served, Logan's phone rang. His mother's number flashed on the screen, and when he answered, Eleanor Pierce's voice carried warmth he hadn't heard in years. I saw the news coverage, she said. I want to meet the woman who taught my son how to love. The next chapter of their lives was about to begin, and this time, they wouldn't face it alone. She'd never met a billionaire's mother, But somehow Eleanor Pierce felt more intimidating than any hospital board or media circus. Eleanor Pierce commanded attention without effort. Silver hair, perfectly styled, pearls that had probably financed small countries, and eyes that missed nothing as she studied the woman who'd changed her son. She stepped out of her chauffeur-driven car, like royalty visiting commoners, but her smile was genuinely warm as she approached the boarding house porch. "You must be Naomi," Eleanor said, extending manicured hands that somehow managed to convey both elegance and maternal affection. "I'm Eleanor, Logan's mother, and I've been dying to meet the woman who made my emotionally stunted son capable of human feelings." Logan winced. "Mother, please don't." "Hush, darling. I'm talking to the miracle worker." Eleanor settled into the porch swing beside Naomi with surprising grace. "My son has never brought anyone home. Ever. He's never even mentioned being interested in anyone. I was beginning to think he was broken." Naomi glanced at Logan, who was turning an interesting shade of red. "He's not broken. Just carefully protected. Carefully isolated," Eleanor corrected. "I tried for years to get him to date, to socialize, to show any interest in building a life beyond corporate spreadsheets. Then suddenly he's flying across the country, hiring legal teams, taking on hospital systems, all for a woman he'd known less than a week." The three of them sat in comfortable silence, watching Spanish moss sway in the evening breeze. Eleanor's presence somehow made the simple boarding house feel elegant, like she carried sophistication wherever she went. "He told me about the baby," Eleanor said quietly, her eyes moving to Naomi's growing bump. "How are you feeling?" Terrified, Naomi admitted, "I've spent the last 8 months learning how to survive alone. Now, suddenly I'm going to be responsible for someone else's survival too." Eleanor's laugh was musical and knowing. "Oh honey, that terror never goes away. I spent 34 years convinced I was ruining Logan by being too protective or not protective enough. Turns out, he just needed to find his own reason for living." Under the table, Logan's hand found Naomi's, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of two people learning to depend on each other. Eleanor noticed the gesture and smiled with the satisfaction of a mother watching her child finally grow up. "So what are your plans?" Eleanor asked. "Besides making beautiful grandbabies for me to spoil." Logan and Naomi exchanged glances, and something passed between them that Eleanor recognized as the silent communication of true partnership. "We want to start a foundation," Naomi said. "Medical justice advocacy, support for healthcare workers facing discrimination. Using the settlement money and Logan's resources to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else," Logan added. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with approval. "My late husband always said the only purpose of wealth is to make the world better for people who don't have it." "I think he would have liked you very much, Naomi." "Have you ever had to win over someone's family? What was that experience like? Share your story below." As evening settled over rural Georgia, Eleanor embraced Naomi goodbye, whispering something that made tears spring to the younger woman's eyes. "There's something in the family vault that belongs to you now," Eleanor said, pressing a small velvet box into Naomi's hands. "The Pierce family engagement ring has been waiting a century for the right woman." Inside was a vintage diamond surrounded by sapphires, beautiful and timeless, and somehow perfect for a love story that had started with sleeping on toilet seats and ended with changing the world. He'd planned every merger, every acquisition, every strategic move of his career, but when it came to proposing, Logan Pierce threw away the playbook. The rooftop garden of Pierce Tech headquarters bloomed with night-blooming jasmine, the San Francisco skyline glittering beyond glass walls that had once felt like barriers, but now seemed like windows to infinite possibility. Logan had spent 3 weeks planning the perfect proposal: private chef, string quartet, elaborate lighting design that would make Instagram jealous. Then Naomi arrived in sneakers and one of his old t-shirts, her hair in a messy bun, complaining about morning sickness and swollen feet, and Logan realized that perfection had nothing to do with staging. "Why are we here so late?" Naomi asked, settling into the chair Logan had pulled out for her. And why do you look like you're about to throw up? I'm the pregnant one. Logan's carefully rehearsed speech evaporated. The ring box in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and his palms were sweating despite the cool evening air. I had this whole thing planned, he began, then stopped. Dinner, music, romantic lighting, the works. But looking at you right now, wearing my clothes and carrying our baby and looking absolutely perfect, I realized something. Naomi raised an eyebrow. That you're having a breakdown? That I don't want perfect. I want real. I want chaos and morning sickness and you stealing my t-shirts and falling asleep in random places in my house. Logan pulled out the ring box, his hands shaking slightly. I want to spend the rest of my life being disrupted by you. The vintage diamond caught the city lights, sending prisms across Naomi's face as she stared at the ring that represented generations of Pierce family love stories. Logan, she breathed. I know we've only known each other a few months. I know this is crazy and fast, and probably terrifies your practical medical brain. Logan dropped to one knee beside her chair, and the words started flowing like they'd been building pressure for weeks. But I also know that life before you was just existing. You taught me the difference between being efficient and being alive. Tears started flowing down Naomi's cheeks, but she was smiling through them in a way that made Logan's heart race with hope. I don't know how to be a husband or a father, Logan admitted, his voice breaking slightly. But I know how to love you. Will you teach me the rest? Will you marry me and let me spend forever figuring out how to make you happy? Naomi cupped his face in her hands, thumbs brushing away tears he didn't realize he was crying. Will you teach me how to stop running? She countered. How to believe that good things can last. How to trust that you won't disappear when things get hard. Will you let me prove that love isn't about rescue? It's about choice. Every day, choosing each other. The ring slipped onto her finger like it had been waiting, but Logan's hand shook as he pulled her close for a kiss that tasted like promises and new beginnings. I love you, Naomi whispered against his lips. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll teach you how to be human if you teach me how to dream again. What would your perfect proposal look like? Traditional or completely unexpected? Share your dream scenario in the comments. As they celebrated on the rooftop, Naomi felt the baby kick for the first time. When she placed Logan's hand on her belly and he felt it too, his expression transformed into something she'd never seen. Pure wonder. Our daughter, he whispered, voice filled with awe. She's going to change the world. Just like her parents did, Naomi replied. And for the first time in her life, the future felt like a promise instead of a threat. 1 year ago, she was sleeping on a toilet seat, running from a lie that nearly destroyed her. Today, she stood in a delivery room, about to bring new life into a world she'd helped change. The private maternity suite glowed with soft morning light streaming through windows that overlooked San Francisco Bay. But Logan only had eyes for Naomi as she held their daughter. Both of them perfect, both of them his. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around Logan's thumb with surprising strength, and he felt his heart expand in ways he'd never thought possible. She's beautiful, Logan whispered, his voice thick with emotions he was still learning to name. She looks just like you. She has your stubborn chin. Naomi laughed, exhausted but radiant in ways that had nothing to do with the expensive maternity suite or professional photographers documenting their daughter's first moments. Isabella Rose Pierce Williams had arrived 3 days early, impatient to join a world that her parents were already working to improve. The Pierce Williams Foundation for Medical Justice had opened its doors 6 months ago, providing legal support for healthcare workers facing discrimination and scholarships for underrepresented students in medical school. Dr. Naomi Williams, her medical license fully restored, her reputation cleared, her future unlimited, had accepted the position of Chief Medical Officer at the Foundation's new clinic. She spent her days providing free healthcare to underserved communities and training the next generation of doctors to recognize and fight systemic racism in medicine. Logan had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Pierce Tech, remaining as chairman while focusing his energy on the foundation and learning how to be a father. The man who'd once optimized every moment of his day now spent hours watching his daughter sleep. marveling at the way she yawned and stretched and made faces that reminded him of her mother. The board meeting is in an hour, Logan's assistant mentioned from the doorway, tablet in hand with the day's schedule. Cancel it, Logan said without looking up from his daughter. Tell them the CEO is busy learning how to change diapers. Naomi smiled at the man who'd once scheduled bathroom breaks and now couldn't be pulled away from feeding time. You can go. She'll still be here when you get back. I know. But I spent 34 years missing out on life because I thought efficiency was more important than experience. I'm not missing any more moments. Later that evening, as Isabella slept peacefully in her nursery, Logan found Naomi in their bedroom, still glowing with the satisfaction of bringing life into the world. She wore one of his t-shirts again, her hair in a messy bun, looking nothing like the polished CEO wives who'd populated his previous social circle. She looked like home. Do you ever regret it? Naomi asked as Logan settled beside her on the bed. Giving up your perfectly organized life for chaos and baby bottles and a wife who still steals your clothes? Logan traced the curve of her face with reverent fingers, memorizing details he'd been collecting for a year but would never tire of discovering. You saved me, he whispered against her temple. From a life that looked successful from the outside but felt empty on the inside. We saved each other, Naomi corrected, pulling him closer for a kiss that tasted like forever and new beginnings. Through the baby monitor, they could hear Isabella stirring, making the soft sounds that meant she'd be hungry soon. Logan started to get up, but Naomi caught his hand. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For choosing love over safety. For teaching me that some disruptions are exactly what we need. So what would you do if love knocked down every wall you'd built to protect yourself? Would you embrace the chaos or run back to safety? Tell me in the comments what you would have chosen. If this story of the Ice Prince and his runaway maid touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories about love that transforms, justice that heals, and the courage to choose each other over everything else. Comment below with what part of Logan and Naomi's journey resonated most with you. And remember, sometimes the person who disrupts your perfect life is exactly who you need to make it complete. In the nursery down the hall, Isabella Rose Pierce Williams slept peacefully, dreaming baby dreams in a world her parents had helped make better. The woman who'd gone from toilet seat to corner office, from runaway to revolutionary, had found her happily ever after not through rescue, but through recognition. Two people seeing each other's worth and choosing love over fear every single day.